All right, so first thing we're going to discuss today is how to download the quiz and then how to upload the quiz. You go out to Blackboard and then you click on this course, and all of the quizzes, all of the assignments, all of the PowerPoint presentations or slideshows will be in the content section. You go down to the week that the quiz is from, which would be the prior week. So you go to week 2, Introduction to Operations Management. You scroll down. Now I know that it says week 3. This is the week that you actually took the quiz, but this is the chapter. To download the quiz, you would click on the link for the document. And as you can see, it's down here, but my computer generally puts all of my downloaded files in this PC and then in the downloads folder. So you can see I have 2 of them there. I downloaded 2. So after you complete the quiz and you name it, you have your last name hyphen BUSS340 hyphen, and then for this it would be quiz number 1. So after that's done, to upload the quiz, you want to again go to Blackboard. You want to click on the course. You go to the content section. You go down to the week that the quiz is for. So again, it says week 3. That's only because you're taking it week 3, and it makes it easier for me to figure out which week I gave out a quiz. So you would click, instead of clicking on the file itself, you would actually click on the heading, and it'll send you to this screen. So then you go down to where it says attach files. You click browse my computer. You select the file. Again, my files are always downloaded to this PC and in the downloads folder. So I would select one of the files and then I would click submit. All right, so we're going to start discussing the week 3 lesson. If you go to Blackboard, you click on this course. Again, you go to the content section and you go to week 3. We're going to be discussing competitiveness, strategy, and productivity. To get to the slideshow, you click on chapter 2 slideshow slides. It should open up or download to your downloads folder. All right, so you can read the learning objectives on your own time, but this is what you should be able to, what you should be learning from this chapter and what we'll discuss a little more in detail. All right, so a cold hard fact: better quality, higher productivity, lower cost, and the ability to respond quickly to customer needs are more important than ever, and the bar is getting higher. Through some of your presentations earlier, you discussed how companies kept the customer satisfaction at a high level. Some of you said, like for example, Nike did a lot of social media trolling and interacting with the customers. Amazon is always getting feedback every time you place an order. You get an opportunity to review that order or review the seller. Another example that wasn't mentioned or discussed would be how technology is. When I started using a computer back in the mid to late 90s, it was just pretty much, you had a desktop which was pretty big. It was pretty bulky and pretty heavy. And we used floppy drives to like store files. Like if you had a Microsoft Office document, you put it on the file. And it only stored maybe 1 megabyte. It was like a really small storage space. And also, there were other floppy. They called them 5 1/4 floppy. They're big, kind of kind of big, like CD looking floppy disk. We would use those to run programs or play games, and if you had a game that required like a lot of space, and since these floppy disks didn't have a lot of space on them, when you got to a certain point of the game that you were playing, it would say insert the next disk so you can continue playing. So, some of the games that I had like 3 or 4 disks where I get to a certain point and I would have to put in the next disc to continue on playing. If there was a hard drive on the hard drive, they all had hard drives, but I think the majority of them, I know they were less than a gigabyte of size. And the RAM was probably, or the processor speed may have been 133 megahertz. I mean, now we're talking gigahertz, and I don't know one computer that would be able to operate some of the computer programs or some of the software just with having 1 gigabyte of hard drive space, because a lot of the programs take more than a gigabyte just to install onto the computer. The operating system is way more than a gigabyte. So, we didn't really have Microsoft Office on, like, for my computers. I didn't have Microsoft Office. I didn't have any of that stuff. It was a Windows 3.0 operating system. Instead of using like network cables or Wi-Fi, we used the telephone line. So if you've ever seen like older commercials of like American Online or something like that, you would hear like the dial tone. That was a common sound that we would hear when we tried to use the internet. And the internet was more so, it wasn't where we watched videos, or, I mean, if you had a fast enough connection, you might be able to watch a video, but it would buffer a lot. So yeah, computers have come a long way. Like now, you have wireless network connectivity. You don't have to be sitting in the same room as the modem or the router. I don't know any computers that come with floppy drives. So the technology has definitely changed, and it just keeps getting better and better each time. Nate, what was your first interaction with the computer? Do you remember how it was? Like anything about your first computer? It's cold hard fact. It's true. Like with technology, when you start interacting with customers and trying to get feedback from the customers, or when you're trying to increase the productivity or have better quality, the product is just going to get better and better, and you're going to just keep setting the bar higher and higher. All right, so the first thing we're going to discuss is competitiveness. And competitiveness relates to how effectively an organization meets the wants and needs of its customers. And a lot of people sometimes get what needs are and what wants are. They get them confused. An example of a need is you need water to survive. Without water, you're pretty much not going to be living for too long. A want would be you want to drink like smart water, or that fancy Fiji water, or that vitamin water. That's a want. Another example is you need food to survive and live. A want would be you want steak and lobster and shrimp and all these other expensive types of food. So just understand that just because you want it, or just because a customer wants it, they might not need it. And companies compete based off of how well they can give customers what they need for one, and then what they want. So what do customers want, and how does a company find out what they want? They use the marketing department to kind of get a gauge of what customers want. And then in turn, the marketing department from that company will give that information to the operations department so that they can produce some type of product or some type of service that would satisfy the customer's needs and their wants as much as possible. So as I discussed in the previous slide, the marketing department, they help companies identify customer wants and their needs. Marketing department also figures out like kind of like a price range of what the customer might want to pay, and the quality level. This is a very important thing for marketing departments to do. An example of this is when Apple first introduced their iPads. I can't remember what year it was, but when the iPad first came out, it was priced at about $500. Some competitors tried to sell their tablets for a little bit higher. They included features like the cameras and things like that to kind of justify having a higher price than what Apple was doing for their iPads. But when Apple introduced iPad 2 with pretty much the same perks and all of the features that their competitors had, Apple kept their price the same. They kept it around $500. So this caused like the competitors to have to lower their price because they couldn't justify charging $200 or $300 more for the same thing that Apple was producing that had a better quality or had similar qualities and features. Advertising and promotion, this is a way that the customer knows what products are available. One thing that's helped advertisement like recently or over the past 10 to 15 years is the internet. The internet, it allows the customer to find out about products a lot quicker than, when I was growing up. Like when I was growing up, you had your sales papers. We got junk mail, from every day when you got your mail. And you also, they would send out like catalogs, like for sports apparel, companies like East Bay, I think it was called, they would send you like a catalog like every month. Sears would also send out, Sears was very known very heavily for sending out like these big phone book size catalogs, with all of their products in it. Well, now the internet has helped it easier for these companies and other companies to advertise and promote their products a lot quicker and easier. All right, so businesses compete using operations. The more efficient and the more effective that the operations department is with producing a product or a service, the more of an advantage or a competitive advantage that company might experience. So some ways that businesses use operation to compete: product and service design. If a design is good and it has good quality, the product will have some type of competitive advantage, or it will be competitive. With cost is really big for a lot of people. I know Josh, you said that you shopped at Walmart because of the convenience. I'm sure that cost also helps with the convenience when you go to Walmart. If you're going to Walmart for toothpaste, you're expected to spend probably about $2 or $3. If they decided to charge you $10 for the same thing, you might reconsider, driving a little bit further. So cost does play a role in how businesses compete based off of operation. Location. That's really important. A company may have a good product, but if they have to choose the location to produce the product, if the product is not readily available or easy for the customer to get to, you know, it might be difficult to sell or to operate or to produce that product. An example of this is automotive companies. If their suppliers are close, then that reduces the cost for transportation of parts that they need to produce those cars. Um, Location is very important for customers or for services as well. Customers and service providers come in contact very often. An example of this would be a barber shop. If you have your favorite barber shop, it might be like closer to your home. If that barber decides to move out of state or out of town, I know it might be your favorite barber or your favorite barber shop, but 9 times out of 10, if that barber shop moves a little bit further away from you, you might not want to, visit that. So location is important, especially when it comes to services. Quick response is important. Companies should be able to respond to competitors quickly, similar to like Apple in their iPad 1 moving from iPad 1 to iPad 2. Quick response for vehicles when there's like a safety recall or some type of recall. If a company finds out that some part or some portion of the vehicle is a safety hazard, they're not going to wait years to figure it out, or they're not going to wait for the next model to fix this problem if it's a safety issue, because they want to get this problem resolved as quick as possible, because that'll save them from lawsuits and things like that. Inventory management, we're going to talk about inventory a lot in this class. Companies don't want to waste money on storing inventory that they're not going to use for a very long time. So products are scattered all around the world. Supply chain has to be used effectively to manage where the inventory is, where the products are, so that they can get these products to the customer as quickly as possible. So the next thing we're going to discuss is why some organizations fail. This is a list of them. We'll touch up on some of these. They neglect the operation strategy. So operations is very important when producing products or services. Failing to take advantage of strengths and opportunities, and failing to recognize competitive threats. If a company spends too much time reacting instead of being proactive, the chances of failure will be higher. When Apple introduced their iPhone, they were already working on their iPad. And when the iPad was introduced, competitors were surprised because Apple was, known for having, that iPhone was known for having quality. But once they introduced that iPad, the competitors were kind of surprised because the iPad had just as much of the same quality as the iPhone. So those companies had to react to Apple being able to produce not only a phone, but also a tablet that's going to compete with the products that they have. Too much emphasis on short-term financial performance at the expense of R&D. Companies may only be looking quarter to quarter. So if a company doesn't have a long-term plan, they may have a hard time adjusting to the changes that are going to come down the line. If they don't put money into the research and development, that's what R&D stands for, then once it's time to upgrade that technology or upgrade that product, they may not be ready because they were so focused on having this product and making all of the money off of this product, they weren't planning for the future to upgrade things. Too much emphasis on product and service design, and not enough on process design and improvement. An example of this would be the Microsoft. They had their own version of their music player called a Zune. and they were up against Apple's iPod. Um, if it's not a very bad thing, it's not a very bad thing, but too much emphasis on a product like Microsoft Zoom that doesn't live up to what it was supposed to be. Like it was hyped to be this competitor to the iPod, but all that hype it fizzled out because it couldn't live up to that hype because the product was just not, it didn't have as good of quality as the iPod. So I don't know if any of you ever used the Microsoft Media Player, but I don't think it's around anymore. I haven't heard of the Zoom in a long time. Let's see, failing to establish good internal communications and cooperation. All right, so communication is very key, not only in your personal life, but also in business. An example of internal communications getting out to the masses and causing a problem would be a company called HP. There was several years ago, an executive sent out an email describing issues with some of the products that HP had, um, which some of the one of some of the employees let that information out. It got leaked out outside of the company. Once stockholders and investors started hearing about all these products that HP was having because of an internal email got sent out to external entities. Once they started hearing about it, their market share went down, their profits went down, their investing went down because something that was supposed to stay in house got out house, and that caused people to worry. So you always want to make sure that if it's something that's supposed to stay internally and in house, unless it's something that's affecting like safety or things like that, you want to keep that in house. If a product's not producing well, that's not something that you want your competitors to know because they're going to use that knowledge to try to put you out of business or possibly take over. All right, so the next thing we're going to discuss you're going to have to do some things with this on your current event assignment, but we're going to discuss how organization does its planning. As you can see in the pyramid at the top, you have the mission or the mission statement, and it's very narrow because it's only a few. You only have a few, usually just one mission statement and maybe a couple of missions that accompany that mission statement. And then at the bottom, you can see that you have your operating areas. You have your finance operations, your marketing operations, and then you have your operations department. That's a little bit wider and there's more area because based off of what the mission is, these departments are gonna, you know, put strategies and goals and things like that together and procedures together so that their department follows whatever the mission statement is. All right, so businesses have a mission, they have a strategy, they have tactics, they have goals, and all of these things assist them with staying on track and ahead of the competition. So the definition of a mission is the reason for an organization's existence. Why are we here? What are we trying to provide? What are we trying to do? And it's a very high level. It's a very high level, and it's something that, you know, it's not like once we reach this, we're done. It's a long-term process. That's why you want your mission statement to be as descriptive as possible to tell what you're about and what you're going to be doing. Strategies, on the other hand, are roadmaps to achieve that mission. Tactics, those are tools and methods used on a day-to-day basis to achieve the strategies. So companies, I know Brandon Stratton has a mission statement. They have a mission. They know what they want to do. But all companies have some type of mission statement that's going to, again, state why are we in business? What are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? And then the strategy and tactics, that's going to tell how we're going to do it. All right, so I did mention the goals. Goals provide detail and the scope of the mission. So goals are going to talk about what the mission's about. It's going to encompass everything that the company wants to do. It's going to list goals. I want to take a couple minutes to have each one of you, like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I want you to jot down a mission for yourself and a couple of goals. All right, so strategies, those come from the goals that are made. And again, those are a little bit longer term than tactics, which we'll discuss tactics as well. Strategy serves as a roadmap for reaching the organizational destination. And some examples of strategies would be something like what Walmart does. They want to offer a low cost. Josh, you mentioned that in your presentation earlier. That was kind of like one of their slogans, or it was included in one of their slogans. Another example of a strategy will be scale-based, uh, mass producing products in order to reduce costs. Another one would be specialization. That a company might be good at a specific area, and they specialize in that, and they gain a an advantage over other companies because of that specialization. You have high quality strategies and service strategies. So there are a lot of different ways to, a lot of different strategies that are available to companies to, achieve their goals and achieve the mission statement. Tactics are day-to-day activities to accomplish the strategies, the how-to part of getting to where we need to be or where that company needs to be. Core competencies, those are abilities that give an organization a competitive edge. So if a company has a specific strength that they have, they will use that ability or that strength to gain a competitive advantage. An example of that would be something like Google. Google is, they are able, they started off as a search engine, and they've built their business around the search engine, to be able to interact with all different types of businesses and all different types of consumers. But it was based off of having that search engine and being really good at providing people with the things that they needed as far as searching online. That gave them a competitive edge to be able to expand their business and grow it a little bit more. Sample operation strategies, again, low costs. We talked about Walmart, U.S. first class postage. As far as high quality, you have companies like Sony, you have companies like Lexus, or brands like Lexus, Coca-Cola. Newness. Apple's always introducing something new, something hip, and something that people think has a lot of quality. Never did I ever imagine that you would be able to do some of the things you can do with a watch. Apple Watch allows you to check your messages, listen to music, check your heart rate. When I was growing up, the watch was just used to tell time, and if you got nerdy about it, you would have a watch that told time and allowed you to do have a calculator on it. you know um, Differentiation and location at the bottom. That's supermarkets, and banks are also there. They go off of convenience. I do have a couple of online banking accounts, but most of my bank accounts are locally, like with companies that are in my neighborhood or in my community. formulating a strategy. Let me see it. Make sure. All right, so strategy formulation. Um, SWOT is a way to figure out how you're gonna, you know, formulate your strategies. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, which are all internal, and then you have your opportunities and you have your threats, which are external. The strength and weaknesses, that's done by the operations. The external or the opportunities and threats, that's done by the marketing department. The company will look at what's going on in their business and compare with what's going on in their business with what their competitors are doing outside the business. They're going to look domestically or in the US, and they're also going to look internationally to see what companies internationally are doing so that they know, they're going to get in where they fit in pretty much. If they're good at one thing and that other company's not good at something, they're going to make that product or that service as good as possible so that that competitor does not catch up with them. All right, so order qualifiers and order winners. So order qualifiers, that's customers, characteristics that customers perceive as minimum standards. Again, I'll talk about the iPad 2. When it was introduced, $500. A few weeks before its launch, their competitor, Motorola, introduced something called a Zoom product, which was supposed to compete with the iPad. Now, the price for the Zoom was almost about $800, and customers compared the prices between the two, and most didn't see a reason, to pay an extra $300 for Motorola's product if they can get the same, if not better, quality with the Apple product. Order winners, characteristics of an organization's goods or services that cause it to be perceived as better than competition. Apple products are perceived to be better, the quality is perceived to be better and higher, and Apple as a whole, anytime Apple introduces something, with the exception of some products, they're perceived as being better than their competitors because they have that perception, and that's what people perceive and that's what customers perceive. All right, there are some key external factors which impact every strategy that a company formulates. Uh, we'll go over a couple of them. First one being the economic condition. When a company is making a strategy, they want to look at what the economic conditions are around them, internally as well. If the future economic conditions are not favorable, that company may decide not to pursue that certain strategy. So they definitely take the economic part, which comes from the finance, and they decide whether or not our strategy should be, concentrating here or concentrating there. Next thing is political conditions. A company may not want to do business overseas. If the company, they probably decide not to do business in other countries because of the political environment. So, if you're thinking about, producing products in other countries, you want to know if it's stable or not. If it's ongoing wars and civil wars and things like that, the company will decide, like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't know if, my employees are going to be safe, if the facilities are going to be safe, if it's unstable in that country, you're going to decide, well, I don't want to deal with it. I'm not going to be over there. Next thing is legal environment. A lot of U.S. technology companies, they know they have to do business with, China, but some of them have a hard time doing business with China because of intellectual laws are different over in China compared to here. So intellectual laws would be, being able to, use your technology or your intellectual property, patents and things like that, to prevent another company from kind of like duplicating what your product is. That China is their piracy laws are a lot different than what's in the U.S. and some technology companies, U.S. technology companies, don't like dealing with China, because of that. Technology, example of this would be like cloud technology. It's one of it's a big business now. Like I stated before, when we used computers back in the late 90s, there was not much networking going on, let alone being able to put something on one computer without having to put a floppy drive in it to copy all that information over to take it to another computer. Now you can just put everything on the cloud, and if you can get to the internet, you can get to it on your phone or on a tablet or on a computer. you know you have that technology. Some of the big players, Amazon is one of the big players. They started off as an online bookstore. So you have a bookstore now, that started in the early 1990s. That's in every type of business you can think of nowadays. And they started off as a bookstore. Another technology company would be like Apple. Apple started off making computers. Now they're into finance. They're in they have a nice market share of the smartphone market. They have fit products, for people that want to work out and keep track of their fitness and their heart rate and their calories burned, things like that. Microsoft started off as a software company. Now Microsoft is in, television. They still have their software. They also do a lot of cloud, just like the other two, Amazon and Apple. They also, they do, they have game systems. They're just into a lot of things. So with technology, those three companies use technology as a way to become bigger and more successful. All right, there are key internal factors as well when developing strategies. One of the things would be like human resources. Strategies have to be formed based off of the skill set and the talents of the workforce that a company has or a country has. People are going to have to do the work, so you want them to be as skilled and as knowledgeable and have a lot of talent so that the work can be done. Financial resources. Finance is very important. You have to have the money to be able to spend the money and to be able to make the money. So, are the finances available to do what a company wants to do, what the strategy says they have to do, or what they're planning on doing? Customers are important. How's the customer going to react to the strategy of the company? Are they going to agree with us wanting to do this, this, and this? So nowadays, many companies use a balanced scorecard, which helps them put strategies and plans into action. It focuses on customers and the internal process. All right, so operation strategies, those are derived from the organization strategy. So whatever the organization strategy is, the operations department will take the organization strategies and make their own strategies so that what they do is going to be in line with what the organization wants to have done. All right, one type of operations strategy would be quality-based strategy. That focuses on quality in all phases of the organization. So many companies have made a name for themselves because of the perceived quality of their products and services. Example, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Walmart, Target. Quality is created at the source. The process involved in producing the product or service. Companies used to produce a product, and they would perform 100% of the inspections right then and there. Any bad items that they would find that didn't meet whatever standards they set, those would be set aside or disposed of. That type of inspection, that in-house 100% inspection, proved to be inefficient and very expensive, because when they found bad items, they produce those items. Those items cost money to produce. So if it's a bad item, it can't be. Sometimes it couldn't be sold. And fixing the problem would also cost a lot of money, because you already produce a product which costs money. So if you find a problem, then you got to redo. You have to rework things to fix that problem. So that's more money and more time being spent on a product. Time-based strategies focus on reducing the time needed to accomplish a task. It also, in addition to reducing time, you want to make the cost lower. You want better quality. You want a higher productivity and time to the market. You want that product to go to the market as fast as possible, but you also want to have high productivity and high quality. And you want that customer to be happy with that product. All right, so the next thing we're going to discuss is productivity. All right, so productivity is a measure of the effective use of resources, usually expressed as the ratio of output to input. So this productivity is different from value-added activities. Value-added activities, to find that out, you would take whatever the output is and you would subtract it from the input. Productivity is a ratio, like I said before, of output to input. The productivity ratios are used for planning workforce requirements, scheduling equipment usage, and also doing financial analysis. So we're going to review some of the productivity measurements. You will need to know some of this information over the next week, so you might want to take notes if you have questions. So productivity, to find out productivity, you're going to divide output or input by output. So the output is always going to be constant, and it's always going to be at the top in the numerator place. The input is what's going to change, and that'll always be in the denominator. So we'll go over this with a couple of examples very shortly. So you have partial measurements, you have multi-factor measurements, where you're going to take multiple inputs and figure out what the productivity is. And then you have your total measurements, total productivity measurement. All right, some examples of partial productivity measures. So you're going to measure units of output per hour, units of output per shift, units of output per machine hour, units of output per dollar input. These are all different measurements or ways to measure productivity. All right, so if you were to take so if we were to do this, we'll try to do this in Microsoft Excel. All right, so you will definitely need to know this next week, how to calculate this. Output divided by labor plus material plus overhead. All right, so based off of this information, all right, so we're going to discuss what's going to be on the quiz. If you go into the book, and go to the key terms, which would be page 63, I think. The terms that you need to know are mission, goals, strategies, competitiveness, productivity, environmental scanning, operations strategy, orders qualifiers, order winners, and SWOT. So that should be 10 terms. All right, for the quiz, for the key terms for the quiz would be mission, goals, strategies, competitiveness, productivity, environmental scanning, operations strategy, order qualifiers, order winners, and SWOT. For the problems that you will have to compute for the quiz, you would want to look at problem number 1 and know how to do that, and then problem number 3 and know how to do that. For the discussion and review questions, number 5 and number 10. So that's what you would need to know for next week's quiz. Now, one thing I need you to note as far as the current event assignment for week 3. For slide number 5, you'll need to list 3 goals as well as 3 strategies. So it's not just listing 3 strategies, but you need to list 3 goals and 3 strategies.